41.
109. An anxious and worried mind. Anxiety and worry are both attacks on the mind intended to distract us from serving the Lord. Yeah. Who here? Raise your hand if you don't have an anxiety and worry problem. Right? Thus, the handout of the day.
Very good. It's like every age.
I know.
You're not kidding. I know. It's like you come out of the womb and you're like, oh, I'm
I think it's a woman thing, though.
Amen. I agree with you. Okay, so let's go through our handout as we know that our subject is anxious and worried. So this I accumulated last year, all these little notes. Jesus tells us in John 14:1, do not let your hearts be troubled, trust in God, trust also in me. Okay, and then we have all these wonderful verses that Joyce gives us too. Lots of verses in Matthew. But I really like this idea that Jesus gives us this verse as a command. It's not an option. We think it's an option, but it's really not. It's do not. Notice how I put it in capital letters. He doesn't tell us to let our hearts be troubled when certain circumstances exist. In the devotional Streams in the Desert, October 10th, the author says, I believe that this verse is as much a divine command as you shall not steal. That's, and we don't think of it that way, right? So worry really comes into, and we're going to talk about this more, but it goes back into when we're looking at all these there's on that little spiritual chart I had, and there's the demons of fear and stuff, and that's where worry comes in, because you're not trusting God. And that's in that whole demons of fear realm. And in not trusting God and worrying, and we know that the physical effects of worry on our bodies, right? So what ties into what we studied last week, the more stressed and worried we are, the more we get worn out, our immune system gets this and that, and all these weird things happen. And as Dr. Leaf explains, she says, our minds and brains are not intended for toxic thinking. God did not create them, our brains, to handle it. So when we have these toxic thoughts, and we grow, as she says, those big black trees from worry and stress and things, our body doesn't know what to do with the tree, and it reacts to it as an adverse thing in its body. And that's where all the sickness and things comes from. So this all ties in, and this is such a big one for us ladies, why we're sick. For me, this is like number one on my sick chart. Worry, stress, anxiety. So learning to give it to the Lord is huge. It's not easy, I give you that. But it's going to be number one probably for most of you on getting better with many different things. So here we have Psalm 37:8, fret not thyself, that tendeth only to evil doing. Okay, in the devotional Utmost for His Highest, Oswald Chambers says, fretting is wicked if you are a child of God. Wicked. Have you been bolstering up that stupid soul of yours? I like that. My stupid soul. Add your name here. I added that part.
That's pretty good.
With the idea that your circumstances are too much for God. All our fret and worry is caused by calculating without God. And this is what we were talking about last week, and Sylvia's not here, that book that she was saying, you know, how small is God or something like that, or how big is your God, and you know, all these ideas. On the second page here, we can skip to this second paragraph on the bottom. It says, Oswald Chambers, he says there, when we realize how feeble we are in facing difficulties, the difficulties become like giants. We become like grasshoppers, and God becomes a non-entity. And that's come from, remember the story in Numbers where they're going to go to the promised land, and they say, oh, we can't go into the promised land. There's giants there, and we're like grasshoppers. And so the idea here is how big is your God? Is He big enough? Is He big enough to take care of all your worries? Well, we know He certainly is. He can do all that. But I love this little poem at the bottom too. It says it all. Said the robin to the sparrow, I should really like to know why these ancient human beings rush about and worry so. Said the sparrow to the robin, friend, I think that it must be that they have no heavenly Father such as cares for you and me. And that says it all, doesn't it? So
She feels so little.
all you have to do is act like a robin or a sparrow and give it to him. And we have these verses, right? What's the one from in Matthew she has here? About the, where is it? He takes care of all the birds and.
It's Matthew 6:26
Matthew 6:26.
on page 111.
111, okay. Yeah, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? So, just these are all just great reminders. It's just, it's a, we get, again, it's part of this brain cycle that we get in, and then the spiritual warfare we're in, because we know that we don't want to be like this, and we pray, Lord, I know I'm stressed, I'm sorry, and we stand. So again, it's casting out those demons associated with it is really going to help you, which is the other half of this whole thing that's not in this book. So we go on here that from his highest, Oswald Chambers states, Jesus never worried, he was never anxious. That's a good one. All that Jesus went through, never worried, never anxious. Resting in the Lord does not depend on external circumstances at all, but on your relationship to God himself. And we've been learning that, right? It's a hard one. Fretting springs from a determination to get our own way. So we've talked about idolatry. And are my circumstances too much for God to handle? And we know that's not true. Suppose God is the God you know him to be when you're nearest to him. That feeling when you just know you're in perfect peace and he's with you. What an impertinence worry is. It's just not even necessary. So Jesus asks in Matthew 6:27, if all my worries can add a single moment to my life. And that's a good reminder, huh? It doesn't do anything.
In fact, it can take a few moments off your life.
It's good years.
Yes.
If you're a really bad worrier,
Yes.
you're going to get disease and it could kill you. So Max Lucado in his book Come Thirsty states, worry is irrelevant. Christ's opinion of worry, irrelevant and irreverent. Worry is irreverent, putting us on a course to distrust God and ignoring his promises that all things work for the good of those who love him. And that's Romans 8:28. Dr. Jeremiah, when preaching on Thy Will Be Done from the Lord's Prayer, commented that you can trust the King to take you to heaven forever, but you are too afraid to trust him along the way. He went on to say, for God to fail in his love for me, even for a second, would mean God would stop being God, because God is love. So those are all great points. And then we have this verse that we've studied before. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. Because fear hath torment. So I know, and I've learned this verse before, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear. Hey, that's good, that's positive, yeah. The other half is what we fail to remember, and what really is the reasoning here is fear hath torment. In the NIV, it's fear is punishment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. So the idea that we've been studying is that, yeah, if you're in fear and you're in worry and you're in trouble, you're in torment, and you're in spiritual warfare. And that's what we've been learning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when we say fear,
Uh-huh.
okay, you know that we are all afraid of something,
Yeah, everything.
whether it, be the snake in the ground or whatever. But when we are concerned about, say, our grandchildren or our own kids, and we're not necessarily concerned about ourselves, does this
That's a good
type of fear gather the whole spectrum, or is it just the fear that you have, like I'm afraid of thunder?
Yeah, it would be all fear, because there's difference in fear and concern. We want to pray for our loved ones, we want to pray for people, and that's concern. But we give the prayer, we pray, and we give it to the Lord. if we give it to the Lord and take it back, and give it to the Lord and take it back, and continue to worry that God's not going to take care of it, then it becomes fear or worry. And fear can be anything from the snake to I'm afraid of what my husband's going to think. I'm afraid of what God's going to think. I'm afraid of losing control of the situation. I mean, fear just goes, that's why it's so massively huge, and it's really one of the primary problems that we have in spiritual warfare is fear, because it just seems to be everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I'm going through a thing with my grandkids, and it's like, yes, I am concerned about them, and I don't know whether it's worry, whether it's fear, but I really don't know what it is. I love them, and I'm taking care of them as best I can, but if they mess up, that's their problem.
Well, good for you. You're doing great.
I mean, that, you know,
That's great, and you're doing great then, and you're letting God, giving
God
God
do
be in
it.
charge, yeah.
Yeah,
The problem is, I don't do that very well, and so I don't let go, and I worry, and I fear, and I spin it around and around, and it makes me exhausted and tired.
well, I'm concerned. I'm
But concern is good, because the Lord wants us to lift our concerns in prayer. But then we say to Him, I give it to you, Lord, I take care. And it goes back to this beginning part, is this trust, is how big is our God? If we give it to Him and say, Lord, I trust you to take care of my grandkids, you are the great God, you created them. And then we continue to ask Him to take care of them, and ask Him and worry about, is He going to take care of them, and are they going to be okay? Then we're not trusting Him anymore. We're fearing or we're worrying.
Yeah, and I'll say to God, I give them to you, they're in your hands, because I'm only grandma, and there are certain things
Right.
that I, as a grandmother, can't say.
You're way ahead of most of the rest of us. That's great. 'Cause
So,
it's hard. It's
Okay.
hard to do that.
I
And again, in this spiritual warfare concept, the demons of fear don't want you to be able to do that. They want to keep you spinning because they know it makes you sick, and they know it makes you tired, and they know it gives you ulcers, and then they know it causes cancer, and they want you to keep doing that. So to be doing what you're doing is great, and that's the hard part, is really surrendering to God. It's just, and we all know with our kids and our grandkids, and it's just hard. It's difficult, but that's why we have these verses, and I have them for you to remind you that it's, the very beginning. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also me. It is a command. It is a command. So we have to remember that. It's not an option. As much as we make it an option, it's not. And if we're truly faithful, and in doing so, in giving God our fears and our worries, things work out better than we can ever make them work out, right?
Yeah.
And then we don't get sick in the process.
Well, it's like whatever happens. And, I can't blame myself for what my grandkids do. I can't, beat my head against the wall
Yeah.
for the bad things or the bad things that they say or whatever they do. So I just have to give it to the Lord.
That's right, but you're doing a great job with it. Sounds like you're doing great, Sally. Keep going. You go, girl. Go, girl.
What's the difference between worry and anxious or anxiety?
I don't know. Anybody know?
I guess I'm thinking of a friend of mine. He has pancreatic cancer. And just, he has both actually, the worry and the anxiety.
Anxiety,
Especially with because something like that is just totally out of your control, that time of the illness.
I don't know. I guess to me, and
Look it up.
well, and that would be interesting because I don't know. I'm just kind of reaching here, but worry seems to me like it's an act, like something you're actively doing. Anxiety almost is a state.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was
Yeah,
thinking, and
but,
anxiety is almost
yeah.
to the point where it's almost a disorder.
Yes, where it's a state of being.
Where
There's
worry
nothing specific, I
is
just
just
feel
a,
anxious.
it's just momentary, that's. I
Oh,
was
so one
thinking.
is-
But don't, I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't have
I
an exact
think you're-
definition.
I
of
think
that,
you're
but-
right. I think you're onto something.
Well, I'm gonna move on unless you guys, you can continue to read all these verses and these little things that I've written. So it gives you an idea about worry and anxiety and how fear becomes part of that. And they're all interwoven together. And I probably won't have time today, but I mentioned it last time and maybe we can get to it. But one of the things that we've never learned and that I've studied is that Job, we always think, okay, Job had all this stuff happen to him and it's a good example for us and how Satan does what he does. Well, as we were talking about in last week's, and the curse without a cause does not come. Okay, so Job, all that stuff that happened to him happened because he had fear. That was the door, that was the gateway. And so it's something that maybe we can spend some more time looking at it, but I just want to give you guys this so you can see that these diseases and things and problems arise from some way that we open the door for Satan and his demons to enter. And so when we fear and we worry and we're anxious, that gives them the opportunity because it's a sin. And Job had that happen with him. He worried first about his children. He says his sons used to take turns holding feasts in their homes, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned, and curse God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. So it sounds like they were having some pretty good parties. It'd be fun to be one of his kids once in a while, huh? Some good times. But Job was concerned about it and worried that they're going to be doing something wrong and sinning. So he was constantly offering burnt offerings and concerned. Then we go on to chapter 3. And Job says, what I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. So Job was preoccupied with worry about his kids, his family, and fears in general about many things. Job also had some problems, wherever those verses were, with pride. We know right on the barf please, don't barf please. The P is pride. Let me find, if I can find that one. So I just wanted to, we'll just glimpse these verses real quick, and maybe we can study them a little more later on another day. So just to give you an example of the curse without cause does not come. And we don't think of it that way with Job. That he opened the door. He actually had some sins going on there, despite the fact that he was the best guy on the planet at that time, like Noah. Where's this one? Oh, 40. Found it. Oh well, find another time. And so then we know at the end, Job is restored, right? And he's restored when he prays for his friends. That's the key. When he prays for his friends, he's restored. And no wonder somehow I lost Job and I'm in Psalm. No wonder I can't find it. I'm really tired, you guys. So when Job comes to the point of recognizing his sin and starts praying for his friends, even though his friends weren't very nice, he's restored. So in essence, the point of it is fear and worry and pride and all these things, they open the door, and it's in that story too. Okay, so let's look at this again, page 109. And go through. It's chapter 12. Okay, so anxiety and worry are attacks on the mind intended to distract us from serving the Lord. Because I was constantly worried about something I never enjoyed, the peace that Jesus died for me to have. It's absolutely impossible to worry and live in peace at the same time. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. So this is just a super good chapter, and if you guys didn't get to read it, please do, and see how, the Lord speaks to you through it. I really, where she says on page 110, she says, Webster's defines the word worry, uneasy and troubled, into the last sentence says, I even heard it defined as to torment oneself with disturbing thoughts. And I thought of our verse that we had here at the beginning, at the bottom, 1 John 4:18, where it says, fear is torment, or hath torment. And doesn't it feel like that sometimes when you're just really in a cycle of spinning worry? It's torment. It's just like, I just don't want to do this, Lord. I just don't want to do this. Please help me, stop. Have you ever found that you just can't break the cycle as much as you want to? That's the demons of fear, and you got to tell them to get out. Let the Lord help you through it, but you've got to get him to tell him by the authority of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, you leave me alone. I know what you're doing. I know now. I'm not dumb anymore. I'm not naive to you.
That was my thoughts when I do that, is it's self-inflicted and it's magnified.
That's the truth.
So you just, you reflect back a day later or a week later and you think, I just added to the problem.
And have you noticed how
when
when you start getting into worry cycle, then it makes
All of
it
a
easier,
sudden.
and then all of a sudden you're like worry about everything. Like, okay, first it was the kids. Now it's that the grass hasn't been mowed. And then it's and you're just like, everything,
Yeah. Yeah, when you wake up, it's like something's not, perfect or whatever.
So that's why we're spending so much time on this, because it's such, especially for us women, it is such a big one. If you can conquer fear and worry and anxiety and get these demons out, and granted they're going to try to keep coming back, but get better at recognizing them, it's going to be a huge step forward for you in your health and then in working on all these other things and diseases and things. And we'll keep working on stuff, but this is like huge for all of us, I know.
One thing I started reminding myself of years ago is I started asking myself, is it life-threatening that I clean the bathroom or I dust? If it isn't, who cares? I'll do it in an hour.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I just do that. Is it life-threatening?
That's a good question to
Yeah.
ask.
I don't know. It's just
I had a friend in college who used to say, if Jesus comes tomorrow, what does it matter?
I use that all the time.
Do you do that like
She's going to use that.
Oh, no, Mom's gonna kill me.
You can say it's all Miss Kitty's fault.
Oh, no.
That's some good ammo right there.
Kill me.
Keep that in your back pocket.
And there's video evidence.
But then let's go back to the week on passivity.
That's not fair.
It's on video. Okay, so anyway, and then she talks about how it makes you tired. Sometimes you end up shaking. I mean, people who actually end up with anxiety disorders, like I've known people that way, where they're absolutely they can't even drive. They're having a panic attack. But it sure makes you worn out, and I found that that's where my chronic fatigue came from. It's worry, stress, and anxiety. So I've truly learned to give it to the Lord and not take it back completely. Is there anything else in here, you guys, that really was stood out? She had some awesome comments. And on 115, she says, God's grace is on you to handle whatever you need for today. But tomorrow's grace will not come until tomorrow. So don't waste today. Isn't that so true? I mean, and Jesus tells us, right? Today's burdens are enough for today. Don't worry about tomorrow's. And we don't want to worrying about tomorrow, which is one of the things I've in the past done. Just kind of take it one day at a time. Again, I just like this idea. How big is your God? He's big. He can do anything. Absolutely anything. He is so big. But we make him so little. So I really want you to cling to how big is your God, and the idea that this is a command. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, trust also. So you've got, that's a command, and then you've got that question. How big is my God? And if you just remind, whenever you start to stress, and you use those as your weapons against Satan, and then you pray, and you give it to the Lord, and you cast out your demons, you're going to be able to deal with it. But you have to nip it in the bud. It's like we were starting in the beginning when we start by turning the channel. The problem with worry and stress is we don't turn the channel early enough. And we get going on it, and then it gets to, it was the kids, and now it's the lawn, and then it's the cleaning the bathroom. And then you're such in a state that it's so difficult to even recognize and deal with it. So the better you get at it, the more you do it, you're going to be able to recognize it sooner. And you're not going to want to be there. You'll say, oh my gosh, I'm starting to stress. I don't want to be stressed. I'm giving it to the Lord, and I'm getting rid of these boogers for bugging me. Okay? And again, when you want to cast out demons out loud and to say the word out loud. She says at the bottom of 115, the best way to shut the devil up is to speak the word and speak it out loud. He's not going to hear you when you're saying it in your head. Like I said, I play praise music all the time. And Tamara's been doing that too. It's just, the nice thing about praise music is it really, the demons don't want to bug you, and it keeps, when you start, I've noticed, if it's going all the time, when my brain starts to wander into worry zone or stress, some word will pop out, or I'll go, oh, I like this tune, and I'll sing, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm freaking out, I'm worrying, I'm stressing, I got to give it to the Lord. And so the music going all the time everywhere kind of brings you back into focus, keeps you from straying too far. Yes, that's good. So she says that, of course, we've talked about this in our weapons of putting on the full armor of God. The single most effective weapon that can be used to win the war against worry and anxiety is the Word of God. And it's coming out of your mouth. Okay. Oh, I like this too, and I put this in the notes that she says that the casting, if we're casting our worries onto the Lord, the word cast actually means to pitch or throw. And I like that illustration. It's like, I'm getting rid of this one, you know?
See ya.
Just bye, yeah. Throw it away. A person who worries, this is on page 116, the middle paragraph. A person who worries still thinks that in some way he can solve his own problem. Worry is the mind racing around trying to find a solution to its situation. The proud man is full of himself, while the humble man is full of God. The proud man worries, the humble man waits. So again, worry is going back to pride, going back to idolatry. Because we think that our worrying and our problem solving is better than God's. It's so pathetic. We do it all the time, a million times a day.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of us being in charge and we're not.
Yeah. I mean, we think we are.
Good.
Yeah. So you can
Crazy.
see as we surrender again to the Lord, He's waiting. He wants to help us. He's designed us to be one with Him. He's designed us to function with Him as Adam and Eve did in the beginning. But we're so screwed up, and now we're in all this spiritual warfare. It's another world, and we're so used to it. Like we were joking at the beginning, it's like we come out of the womb with worry and anxiety.
That's why we come out kicking and screaming.
Am I going to be able to breathe now?
Oh, I can breathe. Okay, that's good.
Now I know.
Oh my God.
It's crazy.
Now, guys don't seem to have as much quote-unquote worry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
they sometimes express it differently.
Yeah. good
A lot
point,
of
Katie.
internalizing, I think, of that, but I don't know.
It's
That's a good.
I think they do. They just show it.
They show it
differently.
differently.
Or they don't show it. It comes
Yeah,
out non-verbally.
I think-
They keep it inside.
And then they get
And then-
ulcers and heart
that's how-
attacks. And
That's why women live longer.
they have all the heart problems. They're all heart is related to stress and worry.
Yeah.
Or they turn off that part of their emotions, and that affects other relationships and things like that.
Just different.
Yeah.
I thought of something, and I think of this whenever I start to worry because I relate to like pictures. Have you ever experienced a child or your child worried when they were little and you knew that they were safe? You knew they were safe with all your entire being, and they were worried. And we think, oh, it's okay, honey, of course you're safe. But they don't know that.
Yeah.
I picture us as that little kid, and God's like, I got this, you're fine, you're good.
Yeah.
But they don't
But we don't see the big picture.
We don't see the big, just like they don't.
That's a
And
good
so,
illustration, yeah.
so to know that it's, you know, our Heavenly Father is saying, I got this, I got
Yeah.
this. You just gotta stay right here, you're good.
Yeah,
So,
Perspective.
It's a good visual.
yeah.
yeah, it's a really good visual. I love that verse in Matthew where Jesus says, take, you know, my burden is easy,
Mhm.
my love's light, my burden is easy, take my yoke upon you.
Mhm.
You know, it's just like, I say that verse all the time, it's like, and I visualize, you know, just giving him the load.
Yeah.
Let him pull it for me.
Mhm.
He wants to, he says, give it to me, please, I'll help you,
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm waiting.
Mhm.
But that's the hard part. So if you guys can, you know, start working on it, it gets easier and easier, and he'll take that load and make it. At the bottom of 117, it says, she says, Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my own peace I now give you and bequeath to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. His peace is a spiritual peace, and his rest is one that operates in the midst of the storm, not in its absence. Jesus did not come to remove all opposition from our lives, but rather to give us a different approach to the storms of life. We are to take his yoke upon us and learn of him. That means that we are to learn his ways to approach his life in the same way he did. Jesus did not worry, and we do not have to worry either. Those are all just, you know, we won't have time to go into the other chapter, but I just thought it was the other, I don't even remember what the next chapter was, it was good too. But this worry one is really, I know it's important, and it's a big battle. And again, fear and worry and stress are those spiritual warfare things that if you can get those conquered, or judgmental critical, that's going to be big. I wanted, real quick, before we go, I just remembered I had one other thing I wanted to share.
I know, and that's,
But
I
we
know,
do.
I know.
Just to inspire you guys, these are some stories about how big is our God. And we are so caught up in our world and the way things are here. I should look this off better. This woman is a missionary in Mozambique, Africa. And she completely has given her life, completely surrendered to the Lord. I mean, she's just, everything is Jesus, that's all it is. And she, I find the story, I should have marked off, I have so many stories in my left. Well, here's one. Okay, she has absolutely complete faith in Jesus, in the Lord. I mean, there's never any, she never worries about anything. They get hauled off to prison, and she's like, God's going to take something, make something good out of this, and he actually did. He, years later, they came back and recognized what they'd done, and they gave him all kinds of money and apologized, and and it just goes on and on. And she sees food multiplied, like the feeding of the 5,000, over and over. There's a time, I can't find the story, they invite all the orphans and everyone to come have a chicken feast. Well, thousands show up. They don't have enough chicken. And the cooks are like, we have chicken for maybe a third of these people. And she says, oh, God will provide, don't worry.